I said nobody can say everything that is the truth. So I was labeled a reactionary student. At school, they held several criticism meetings against me. What was most unbearable, and even today still makes me uncomfortable, was that none of my friends would speak to me. I became totally isolated.
We heard older people talk about Jiang Qing and knew they really looked down on her. So we made up jokes. And we said the chaos of the Cultural Revolution was due to Jiang Qing, and Mao should divorce her. Jiang Qing's group heard about what we said.
For his casual remarks, Zhang Longlong spent the next 10 years in jail. At the end of 1968, Mao started a campaign to have city youth, former Red Guards and rebels, re-educated by the peasants. Millions of families were wrenched apart as young people were sent to spend years in China's most remote regions. But for some, it was a chance to start anew.
After we got onto the tractor, one of the students asked me something. I remember that as soon as she opened her mouth, I cried because it had been a very, very long time since anyone had spoken to me. Later, I told them I was not like them. I was someone who was wrong, who was guilty. But they were especially nice to me. We stayed together for 5 years. Even now, they are my best friends.
April 1969. Most delegates at the Congress were radicals who had risen to power through the Cultural Revolution. Many moderate officials were still under attack and in prison. Lin Biao, long seen as Mao's heir apparent, was officially appointed his successor. Lin's keynote speech signaled a new government preoccupation with foreign relations. He denounced both the Soviet Union and the United States as imperialists and enemies. Just weeks before, fighting had broken out on the border between China and the Soviet Union. Mao and Zhou Enlai now saw the Soviet Union as a greater threat than their traditional enemy, America. They sent signals to the U.S. that they would like to begin talks. Lin Biao opposed the overtures to America. He is alleged to have plotted a coup against Mao. In September 1971, when the plot was discovered, Lin reportedly tried to escape. But his plane crashed over Mongolia.
The death of Lin Biao was a great shock to everyone. Before his death, the entire propaganda machine treated him as the heir to Mao Zedong. He had very high stature, second only to Mao. People treated him as a revolutionary saint. Now suddenly he was a traitor, a very bad person.
After Lin Biao died, we stopped the daily rituals praising Mao and Lin. The fanaticism faded. It was as if we had all been in a dream.
For the first time, people began to question Mao's infallibility.
Did Mao trust the wrong person? If Mao had trusted Zhou Enlai instead of Lin Biao, would that have been better? There was a vague feeling that Mao had made a mistake. But of course no one dared talk about it.
After the Lin Biao incident, Mao looked calm on the surface. But from a doctor's point of view, I knew that his health was greatly affected. Sometimes I tried to persuade him to take medicine for his pneumonia and heart disease. He would take some and then refuse. One day, at the beginning of February, he asked me, "Do you know that Nixon is coming?" I answered, "Yes, I do." He said, "Can you get me well before Nixon comes?" I said, "Yes, I can, but you'll have to cooperate." He said, "All right, you can start now."
In February 1972, after months of secret negotiations, President Richard Nixon arrived in Beijing to begin a new relationship with China.
Nixon saw two major advantages to this improved relationship with China. First, I think Nixon always saw the relationship on its own merits. The other involved the major Soviet role in Southeast Asia. Hanoi was a proxy of the Soviet Union. Now, I think Nixon recognized that a great restraint on Moscow would be the result of an improved relationship between Beijing and the United States.
I remember that Mao said to Nixon, "After our two countries resume diplomatic relations, we will still have to curse you a little in our newspapers, calling you American imperialists. You can also curse us a bit. This is just for show, firing a few empty shots. It'll be easier for ordinary people to accept. If we suddenly say that the American imperialists are no longer imperialists and they've become friends of China, people will find it hard to accept."
We expected and frequently received diatribes for public consumption, both in the press and in the diplomacy itself. The careful issue was not to be carried away by this and overly offended by it as we attempted to achieve a greater outcome.
The outcome was an historic agreement called the Shanghai Communique.
The joint communique which we have issued today will make headlines around the world tomorrow.
这个公报啊，将是明天全世界的头号新闻。
But what we have said in that communique is not nearly as important as what we will do in the years ahead to build a bridge across 16,000 miles and 22 years of hostility which have divided us in the past.
Issues like America's role in Vietnam and U.S. relations with Taiwan could not be resolved. In those cases, both sides stated their positions and agreed to move ahead. Nixon's visit signaled China's opening to the world. Gradually, China would become an active player in world politics. As the country began to emerge from the worst terror of the Cultural Revolution, Mao turned his attention to China's peasants. Small rural factories were set up to make farm tools and process local crops. Thousands of paramedics or barefoot doctors brought free